walked over to my computer and came up here.
Okay, baguettes, it's time. You ready to learn how to shoot Boom Boom? Because I'm going to teach you how to shoot Boom Boom. It's easy, it's quick, it's deadly. But TSB requires me to teach you a few different types of armor first before we can shoot at them. I know, boo. Anyway. This isn't, I mean, this is a slat cage, but there's a different term I'm looking for this. What's it called?
Spaced armor?
Spaced, correct. Now, spaced armor you normally find only on your vanilla vehicles and in IFA World War II. However, for IFA, they don't behave like space. They're actually just part of the hitbox in general. However, for vanilla vehicles, such as this Gorgon, this will actually stop HE rounds. So, you know, if someone whiffs a rocket at you from range and it hits this cage, it hits the cage, it damages the cage, and it'll actually open up part of the cage. But the actual vehicle itself will remain fine. So, that's what spaced armor is. Basically, it's spaced armor around the actual frame of the vehicle that prevents that vehicle from getting hurt. What type of armor is this that the Bradley has? Reactive, right, because when you hit one of these panels, a chemical reaction happens that dissipates the energy of the warhead's explosion on the panels instead of into the chassis. That would cause damage to said chassis or the people inside. So, when you fire AT, where do you not want to aim?
Not the reactive armor.
Yeah, you don't want to aim at the stupid armors because you're just going to whiff your shot. Now, this is always subjective, but I like to clarify it. Where is the best place to hit a vehicle?
On the glacier.
Rear.
What was the first one, Argo? I didn't hear you.
On the glacier plate.
On the what plate? The front? Okay.
The front, on the lower front, under the front plate.
That's fair. Alright, so there's two different answers here that I usually go for. The first is, at least for tanks, BMPs, BTRs, and everything, the top. Because the top has the thinnest amount of armor. This is IRL, by the way. For you to hit your shot. So if you get a little bit of elevation on your target, hitting the top, usually on the rear, but it depends on the vehicle, I'll get to that in a second, will guarantee you a kill. The second part, which is related to where you hit it on the top, and also in terms of armas considered, is the engine. You hit the engine, even if you get it to moderate damage, it'll force the AI to bail out, and at least try to repair it, in which case you can shoot him. For this Bradley, the engine is actually on the front, I believe, and this Gorgon, then since they're APCs, normally the engines are in the front, so for cars, such as Humvees and stuff, engines at the front of the car. For APCs, BTRs, BMP, not BMPs, but BTRs, Bradleys, APCs, blah, blah, usually it's in the front as well. Bradley, I think, is an exception. It might be in the back, I forget. But some vehicles have certain exceptions. And then BMPs and tanks, those engines are towards the rear of the vehicle. Now, let's be real here. Any hit on a vehicle that is not the reactive armor or in the track is generally going to net you at least a mobility kill. And that means it can't drive anymore, which means the player's AI, get out. However, we do run scripts here to prevent the AI from sometimes bailing out of their vehicles, even if they're mobility kills. So aiming for the tracks, for example, every time, or shooting out 5 out of the 8 wheels, if it is an 8-wheeled Vic, isn't always going to help you. So, with that said, if you can't make a hit on the engine, does anyone know the second best place to hit a vehicle? Turret. Turret's correct. Yep, gun. It's because if you disable the gun or turret, you'll tell because the gun will be looking at a downward incline. The AI never look at a downward incline unless you're like right up to the vehicle. That means it's disabled. Some vehicles, if you just hit it in the turret, it fully disables it. Others, you can disable it turning left or right, but it can still move up and down. So sometimes a second shot's required. But at least hitting the turret will turn any IFV, infantry fighting vehicle, into just an expensive APC that can transport 3 dudes or more. So you effectively disable it and force the Zeus to either, remove the vehicle from play by taking it out of the AO, or trying to repair it, which, lets you shoot the guys that come out to try to repair it. Cool. Third best place would be the tracks or the wheels to go for a mobility kill, but if you need to do that at that point, you're kind of screwed. Also, it helps if you don't have blindfolds on. But anyway, let's shoot some fucking AT. So, this is the range. I will tell you when you can fire and when you cannot. Each of those flagpoles represents 50 meters going up to 300 meters. Do note that there are targets outside of the airstrip range that I put down for you to whiff at if you feel like it. It's entirely up to you. Don't care. But otherwise, there are 5 modules. The 5th one I'm just going to talk about for the sake of saving time. But otherwise, yeah. To fire a rocket or missile launcher, you aim at your target. You then yell clear backblast. Hold Alt to look behind you with your mouse. Make sure no one's behind you. And then yell rocket, rocket, rocket if you hear someone say backblast is clear or you confirm that no one is behind you. This is because backblast, as I taught in basic, or hopefully the other basic classes taught, if you backblast somebody, you're going to give them a lot of wounds. And if they're right behind you, you're not only going to backblast them, but the gas is then going to reflect onto you and you're going to hurt yourself. And you can even knock yourself unconscious, and it's going to take the medic a minute to get you up because all of those small to medium cuts, abrasions, whatever, are separated throughout your body and limbs, and it's just a pain in the ass. Capiche?
Understood.
Alright, so this won't go over every single AT weapon we use in TSB. It kind of divides it into categories. But if you understand all this, you'll understand pretty much a majority of the weapons we use within this community. So these are all scroll wheel BIS arsenals, so feel free to come up to this box. Let it load for a hot second. Alright, so then you go to the launchers category. We've got some RHS launchers here because no matter what, we'll almost always be using RHS related stuff. So, first off, your blue 4-1s with the blue star. These are your single-shot ATs. Excuse me, for the entire box, these are your single-shot ATs, usually given to a rifleman as an emergency AT. If, for whatever reason, your primary AT guy is down, or if you're doing a Special Forces thing and you don't have a dedicated AT member. So, at least to use the blue 4-1s, they're a bit unique, because if you take the M72 or M136, when you get it, and hit the 3 button to take it out, you're going to notice that I can click all I want, but it's not going to fire. That's because it requires an extra prepping mode, which you just hit the R button for, and it basically takes the sights out and preps the gun. And that's also, in terms of the metagame knowledge, actually loads the rocket in the launcher. Do note that if you put that launcher back on your back and take it back out, it will still be primed. So keep that in mind. But after a while, if you keep it on your back, it'll unprime itself. So, going down the list here, let me get back into the arsenal here. You're going to also want to memorize these terms because it'll also apply to Grenadier Training. You have HEAT, which means High Explosive Anti-Tank. Basically, anything that says AT is going to kill VIX. And then HEDP, High Explosive Dual Purpose, which means it's either used for killing VIX or killing infantry because it has more of an HE warhead. Now, when given the choice, you always want to go for HEAT if you're being a tank buster rather than HEDP, because if you're fighting infantry, then you generally want to let your machine gunner or your, the rest of your guys with guns take care of things while you want to specialize as an AT-man. The M72A7, that is your law or your fiberglass tube. This is, again, emergency in case something charges up on your position. The RBR M80 is similar to the RPG 75, which is the green symboled one. These are literally like grenade launchers. I would not recommend using them. They tickle anything that's bigger than an APC. They only do, I would say, minimal to moderate damage against things like BTRs and such, but against an IFV, you generally want to go for mobility kills with these because they suck. And then you have the RPG-26, that is the Russian version of the M72. Do note that when you're taking this one out, and you hit the right click, you might see that you get the top sights. That's for close proximity. If you hit the, what is this, the backslash key on your numpad, or hold, I believe it's right control, and then click, excuse me, left control and right click, then you can switch between the sights. And then page up, page down lets you alternate between those sights, and it'll tell you what the ranges are in the top right of your screen. So do note that some launchers have alternate sights between what is called a bore sight, which is the top of the launcher. That's just where the rocket's going to go if you have to fire at close range, or if you actually need to range it, you gotta go to that alternate fire mode. And then, special circumstance, we have the RSHG-2. This fires what I like to call a big suck round, also known as a thermal barrack. These are not meant to be used as AT. They are used as grenadier weapons because a thermal barrack warhead, when it detonates, it sucks out all the oxygen in the area and literally burns out the lungs of enemy forces. So this thing's nice because it ignores armor. If you're fighting Russians, for example, that have really high body armor, this will instantly kill them if they're close enough. So this is used against large groups of infantry in the open or in buildings. We'll talk more about thermal barrack in the RPG section as well as the Grenadier section. So, these are, like I said, emergency rocket launchers. They are not effective to anything past, I want to say, BMPs and IFVs. Anything that's like a T-72 or even a T-55, if it gets hit by this and it's not its critical spot, it'll just tickle it. Honestly, no, these would still be effective against T-55s. T-72s and above, though, or Abrams, any other main battle tank, don't use these on them. Have your dedicated AT guy go for it. Or if you get a nice top-down shot on their rear where their engine block is, take it, because you'll still be able to hopefully disable it. So,
Liru?
Yep.
The RPG-75, anything about that one?
Let me go back in the arsenal. That's the Russian one, right? That's, that one, the RPG-75. It's like the RBR M80. It just fires like an improvised HE charge. They don't really do much against vehicles. You're free to try them out, but I would not, like, I don't even pick these up when I see enemies have them if I need AT. I usually just look for the RPG guy instead, because these do not do, like, they won't even blow up armored cars. Everything else in these, anything that's not the RBR or the RPG-75 will actually destroy an armored car. That's how messed up they are. But you feel free to be the judge. Grab an RP, grab a whatever from this box. Range is open. Make sure you clear your back blast. I want to hear you call that out. Then yell rocket, 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 take your shot, and then go back to the arsenal and get a new one. Also, when you need to cross behind somebody with a rocket launcher, you say crossing behind if they have it out. Coincidentally, if you're going in front of somebody firing their gun, you want to yell crossing. You want to keep saying crossing or crossing behind, depending on where the danger zone is, as you're going through, and then you stop saying it when you're through that area. So feel free to go. Gal, we already went through armor. I'll see you in Grenadier.
Alright.
Yes, Ozzy, there will be Warcraft later at 9:30. Would you say you were in the danger zone?
Crossing behind.
It takes so long to get a T-FAR.
Backblast.
So how y'all doing, by the way? Sorry, I was lecturing, so. Good hit on that AA, Vic, but that one was a miss. It's all the way at 300, half damage, but it's still up. That shot goes right for that bulldog, but again, minimal damage. Because these things are designed to be your oh shit to, you know, possibly disable a BMP or something.
Back blast. Rocket, rocket.
Swing and a miss. Wow.
Behind.
One of them actually got a hit on the tank destroyer, but it only blew up 2 wheels. The legendary Zeus Eden is right. Feel free to go back to the first box and get another launcher. Also, good shot on that Rhino, whoever made it.
Thank you.
I'll let him go for another 2 or 3
What was
minutes.
the control to switch sites again?
Either the the backslash on your numpad or hold left control and right click when you're in the sights.
Thank you.
Yeah, so front shot just tickled the damn thing.
Try the plane out there. Why not?
Clear back blast.
I think that shot was a little to the left, but it would have hit the armor plates right there.
Closing behind. Closing behind.
Behind
Closing
you.
behind.
Crossing behind. Really.
I don't know where that went. He whiffed it way up because I heard him go for the plane.
Back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Nemesis, I think it counts it for every 30 days. I could be wrong, though. I don't know.
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Thank you for the bits, Eden. Appreciate it. Yeah, so that bulldog. Alright, let's bring it in. Bring it in. Come back down. Range is no longer hot, guys. Bring it back in. Bring it back in. Hold fire.
Oh.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So, you got some good hits in, but nothing blew up. Because like I said, these are your emergency, possibly disable the vehicle AT. They suck compared to what I'm going to show you in a second. So, let's go to module number 2. These are your reloadable, dedicated AT launchers that we normally give to everyone, 1 per squad, I would say. So, we got to talk about a few different things with these launchers, so I'd like everyone to grab a Mod 0 Moz. It's the sand version for anyone that is colorblind or whatever. And pull it out and look down range with it. I'll give you guys a second. So, immediately what you'll notice looking down the sight of this thing is that it's effective up to 1,000 meters. As long as you can hit something. However, it has a solid red line on its right, and then a bunch of other lines that go from 200 to 1,000. That is because if you were to take this solid line and line it up with the track of the vehicle, and then line it up with the chassis, so below where the gun starts, the actual chassis where the players sit, you would be able to get a guesstimation of the range of the vehicle to appropriate your shot off of. So, for example, that bulldog out there is, if I line it up with the bottom red line, you'll notice that the chassis falls in between the 200 and 400 meter range, respectively. So it's around 300 to 350 meters out there. And if we were to count the flags, 50, 100, 150, 200, it's about 250 meters away. So, again, it's not perfect, but it's better than, you know, guesstimating on your own if you don't have a rangefinder. So, that's a way for you to calculate ranges if you don't have anything to calculate said range with. We'll see it again in other launchers as well as the RPG when we get to that. Otherwise, going back into the arsenal here, if we were to look at the RPG-32, you'll notice that there's a big plus when you zoom in, and it goes all the way down to 5. So from 0.5 to 5, it basically means 50 to 500 meters. But you'll also notice that the lines are getting closer as you look down. What those lines basically mean is if you're attacking the vehicle from the side, if you can fit the vehicle front to back in that line, let's say you can fit it between the 1 line, then it's 100 meters away. And then if it's further away and you can fit it in the 1.5 line, that's 150 meters away. And you know how to aim. So those are two different little built-in rangefinder systems that rocket launchers tend to have. Because you're not always going to be NATO with rangefinders and C-tab and all that sort of stuff. Now, let's actually look at some of those rangefinders and C-tabs and sort of thing. Everyone grab a Mark Mod 1 Moz, the green one. This one, if you notice, it has the V sights, which I fucking hate. You aim for the top of those Vs, but you also have a little red box underneath. If you hit the T key, wherever you're pointing that red dot, it gives you a range. So, for example, that F-18 in the back is about 940 meters away. At least from where I'm standing. It might be plus or minus a meter, depending on where you are. One more thing about these launchers, they are reloadable rocket launchers. So if you go to the backpack tab, you'll notice that for the Moz, you have an HE-AT-75 round and an HE-44 round. HE, by the way, if it's by itself, just means high explosive, which means it goes boom boom and kills infantry, but it usually doesn't do that much damage against vehicles. Capiche? Alright. And then RPG, you have, if I remember correctly, I don't, so let me just grab one real quick. You have the RPG-42 rocket and the RPG-42 HE rocket. If it doesn't specify, then the one that just says rocket is usually your AT, and then the one that says HE is your anti-infantry. So usually with these types of launchers, you have two different choices of rockets, one being your anti-infantry, one being your AT. Normally, you will carry mostly AT with 1 or 2 HE for emergencies, but it depends on what you can fit in your backpack. Anyway, range is now hot. Try using these launchers. You're going to notice that these vehicles are going to blow up a lot faster due to the fact that A, these are more powerful warheads, and B, you can reload quicker.
Fucking behind.
No, Slash, that's an F-18 back there. A-10 has a much bigger wingspan, and it doesn't have a dagger for a cockpit.
Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Your back blast.
So they're still challenging the tank. So good hits on the tank. Reactive armor took it. Again, side hit on that Rhino. You hit it where you hit the fucking disposable, so it didn't do that much damage because that place is already injured. It was a weak hit.
The back blast.
Way close.
Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Don't know if he was firing closer or forward.
Ah,
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
And the tank finally goes down. Who keeps missing with the
back
Moz?
blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket. Your back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Someone's aiming for the far stuff. There's the kit down.
Back blast.
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Miss. That was a hit. Someone's going for that damn F-18.
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket,
Back
rocket.
blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Well, you hit it. It would disable that. All things considered. Alright, hold fire. Hold fire. Alright. So, with those, you were actually able to blow stuff up. Now, it doesn't help that I have all the vehicles facing forward, which makes them harder to blow up. But, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the tank right now. Its reactive armor is disabled again. You blew that up. You blew up one of the far tank destroyers. And I believe you blew up the Badger over on the right side of the range. So, yeah, pretty good for 4 guys. But, like I said, more powerful warheads when you use the AT versions than disposable. But this is what you're generally given as a member of the squad. Now, let's talk about the RPG. Now, this is the most complex fucking rocket launcher you'll ever use. And if you ask why, just turn around. So, when you grab this launcher, make sure you grab it. Grab the PGO 7v3 sight on the right. And I'm going to quickly go over what each one of these warheads mean in the backpack. So, your PG-7V is your standard AT. These are older modeled warheads that they've been using ever since the RPG came into existence. They're your standard AT. Your 7VL is your improvised AT. It has a shorter range, but a bigger bang for your buck. I would say the PG-7V is a warhead in damage. I always say it's in between the reloadable launchers and the disposable AT, so just about as powerful, if not slightly less than what you just fired, but the PG-7VL is, I would say, better than the warheads you use in those reloadable standard AT launchers. Your PG-7VR, also known as your tandem heat, these are your tank killers. However, they have a very short range and slow fly time. So they're only used exclusively if you can get right on top of your target, but it will almost always guarantee a kill as long as you hit it in the chassis and not the track. 1 second. Scratch my back. Alright, sorry about that. Continuing, the OG-7V is your HE shell. This will flay infantry alive. Your TBG-7V is your big suck round. These are used against groups of infantry or buildings, and will do it to some efficiency. Then you have your Type 69 airburst. Don't use it. It hits the ground, then goes up in the air like an HET grenade. We'll talk about those in Grenadier Training, but honestly, you're better off just packing OG-7Vs instead of these. And then your PG-7VM HEAT grenades are comparable to your RBR launcher grenades from the first module. Basically, they tickle vehicles and they kill infantry, but why use that when you can use an OG-7V? Generally, the airburst and the PG-7VM you will never see in ops because we as Zeus's refuse to give them, and if you get them, then your Zeus hates you. Capiche? Alright, so let's get over to the chart. So, I asked you all to grab a sight because this sight is right here and we've labeled everything for you. So, first off, the bore sight, where the rocket's going to go when you fire it. So if you need to fire point blank, aim with the bore sight. Just make sure it's not within like 5 meters, otherwise you're going to kill yourself, especially if you use a big suck or OG round. Now, if you notice, you have the little lines right here going up from 2 to 10. It gets covered by the 200 meter. I apologize for that. But again, that's your built-in rangefinder that we talked about with the mod 0 Moz. So again, that's how it works. It's a little less clean though, so keep that in mind, but it creates, you know, kind of a line arc for you, so it helps you better guesstimate your target. So, going over, first off, your PG-7V is used by the top left sight. It is range up to 500 meters from the 2 to 5. So if you have to engage anything between 0 and 200 meters, you just use the bore sight and you appropriate as needed. So halfway would be 100 meters between the plus and the 2 line, and anywhere in between, you know, just guess. You're probably going to hit it because the 7V kind of goes straight before it starts dropping. When it starts dropping, you can then worry about the 200 to 500 meter ranges. So the 7VL, since it's a bigger warhead, with the same sight lines, it can only go so far. It goes less distance than your 7V sight. So it can only go up to 300 meters. Now, your OG7 rocket for, again, your HE purposes, it's unique because it uses this entire sight line, and it can go up to 300 meters using the entirety of your scope. And then your thermobaric and your tandem heats, they're big, heavy rounds that travel slowly. They use these lines down here, the 100, 150, and 200 meters respectively. And if you need to aim less than 100, first off, you shouldn't, because then you'll be firing very close to yourself and possibly injure yourself. You use the in-between space between the, you know, plus and the 200. But I wouldn't recommend that. When you actually fire these warheads, especially the thermobaric or tandem, you'll see what I mean about them going super, super slow. So, range is now hot, guys. Have fun. Try out these warheads. I think you'll like what you see. What's wrong with it, Ice? Lay it to me straight.
Blast. Rocket, rocket.
That was a hit on the gun. I'm seeing black scorch marks, so gun would probably be disabled. Ah, there. Thanks, Ice.
Your back blast.
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Nice. Whoever keeps hitting it there, they keep hitting it on the right side. They hit the slat cage, though. I completely oofed that. Nice.
Standing by.
Your back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Clear back blast.
Rocket, rocket.
Standing by.
Your back blast. Your rocket, rocket.
Guys, don't be a bunch of French breads. Try the frickin' tandems out. Or the TBs.
Your back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
I say French bread because the actual word apparently gets you Twitch banned for 30 days.
Clear back blast.
So we're seeing an OG and a TB.
Rocket, rocket, rocket.
It was a big whiff. Is he going for the jet?
Clear back blast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Back blast.
Ah, TB and an OG explosion. All right, let's bring it in. Range is bad. Don't shoot. Yeah, RPG is, I would say, one of the most fun launchers you can use in terms. Actually, no, the most fun rocket launcher you can use once you get used to the sights, because it has the most versatility out of every rocket launcher, because you get so many different choices for warheads. Cool. Now we're going to elevate to missile launchers. The difference between rocket and the missile is that a rocket is a dummy ordnance that you just fire and hope it hits your target if you ranged it right, whereas a missile, you either lock on or you have some form of guidance control after you have fired the munition. So, going to the arsenal here, we're going to go over two different missile systems, first being the Metis. Now, the Metis is rarely given. Usually you only see it on Fridays, but sometimes we whip it out for some hardcore Op4 stuff. But looking down the range, you'll notice that you get like a little tri-fighter sight, as I like to call it. And if you hit the N key, you get a red, black, dark hot. Actually, no, it's a white hot first, and then a dark hot. But basically, it also has like the mod 1 Moz. If you hit the T key, it can also range your target. And if your target was recently moving or had its engine on, you'll be able to lock on with the T key. However, nothing out there has its engine on, so it won't work for today. This rocket launcher, missile launcher, you got to be a little bit careful, because once you fire the round, it then starts trailing in, moving slightly to the left or right, up or down, and it'll be homing in on that center point if you fire it. So if you don't lock on, it'll follow your little dot in the middle, because it's a fly-by-wire system. It just follows that dot. So if you're trying to track something, make sure you don't do any jagged left or right turns, because it'll be harder for the missile to follow your fly-by-wire. And I have had instances where if I do too much of a sharp turn, the missile may overcorrect and actually miss the target, hitting too much to the right or left, because it's trying to accommodate for your firing. So you'll see what I mean when you fire a few rounds of this missile system. You can give it a try, wobbling it to the left or right. But otherwise, I'm now going to talk about the Titan. So, when it's vanilla, the Titan is pretty much the same thing as the Moz. So, the Metis. But you can dummy fire it. However, when you add Ace and RHS, it turns into a Javelin system. Now, before I get into that, I'm going to quickly note that the Metis and the Titan have two types of rockets. Missiles. The first is an AT and then an AP. AP in this case means anti-personnel, because they are HE missiles. I don't know why they don't just label them as HE, but who knows. The AP you can dummy fire out of the Titan and modded, but the AT acts like a Javelin. Javelin is unique because I'm going to switch over to the Javelin, but both of the sights are exactly the same for the Titan and Javelin when it's modded. Javelin has a very limited amount of backblast. Backblast still exists with the weapon system, but it, unless they're like right behind you or behind your left or right, they're generally not going to get backblasted. So, to lock on, first off, this won't fire unless you have a lock on. So, to do that, you have to hold Tab. Now, if you're doing that out of your regular menu right now, you're going to notice that it's not going to do anything. That's because you have to go to one of the thermal hots, either white hot or black hot, to actually fire it. Because then when you hold Tab and look at anything, you'll hear beeping. Sight will line up to the target you're aiming at, and then a big cross on the screen will appear, a big plus sign, and that'll let you know it's able to fire. Also, the Seek button on the top right will light up. Now, Titans have two different fire modes, DIR, which is lit up right now, or Top. If you hit the F key, you can switch between the two. Also on the top right, you'll notice your solid white box under the word Javelin. If it's set to top, will show an arrow pointing down. Top basically means missile will fire in the air and then hit the target from the top, similar to how your Call of Duty Javelin works. DIR means the missile will go a little in the air and then go towards the target. Now, top down is usually the most effective because, as I discussed in the beginning of the training, the armor is weakest on most Vics from the top. So if you engage from the top, you're either going to hit the engine or hit the turret and guarantee yourself a disabled vehicle, more often than not. Now, if the vehicle's doing a lot of evasive moving left and right and it makes it hard for top to hit, then sometimes direct is viable, especially if it has like tree cover or a camo net on top that can, you know, block the shot because hitboxes. It's going to be situational on how you want to use it. Now, also fun fact, if you remember what I said with the Metis, you need a thermal signature to lock on. With the Javelin, that's not the case. So even if the vehicle is stationary, you can lock on. That's because this thing can lock on to anything that has a thermal signature. Let me give you an example and make sure that this is loaded. Alright. Yeah, one of you already knows what I'm going to do. So I got my buddy Chad out there. If you look down range behind the APC, you'll see him on thermal. Clear backblast, by the way. And you can lock on to Chad. Rocket, rocket, rocket. And you can follow on the thermal scope. Missile goes to Chad, and Chad is now dead. So, this thing can lock onto vehicles, helicopters, bunnies, whatever the fuck you want, because that's the power of the goddamn Javelin. I love this thing. Any questions? Now, one little addendum I will say is this is the RHS Javelin with the actual CBA Javelin, or excuse me, 3CB Javelin. CBA is the base mod for everything. 3CB is the British Commando mod. I think we're getting rid of it on the next mod rotation in a week or two, but it has a clue system, which is the little module next to the actual Javelin tube that attaches to the tube. If you put it on your back, you'll notice that little clue system actually disappears and you only carry the tube. With an ACE interaction, you can actually hook up that clue system to the tube if you have one on your back, and that's how you fire it and also reload it. Because that clue system can also be used as a binocular sight because it's like the MDX whatever scope, which is just a thermal sight to help you spot targets. So, fun thing I like to explain because someone brought it up a few trainings ago. Like I said, this won't cover every single AT weapon we use, but it carries the general basics. Any questions? Alright, range is hot. Have fun. Poor Chad, right? Mox, that's how you fire a fucking launcher. You know.
Clear backblast. Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Oh! Top.
Clear backblast.
Actually, that was direct.
Waiting.
Coming behind.
Yeah, I gotta open this to make sure include crews disabled.
Rocket, rocket, rocket.
One of you is doing the cheeky thing.
Waiting orders.
Behind you, behind you.
Ready.
Ah.
Rocket, rocket, rocket.
Clear backblast.
One of them's going for the off-road.
Comandante Asturan.
Yeah, oh yeah, the javelin being fired. Speak of the devil. Such a nice weapon system. Alright, let's actually bring it in, guys. Let's bring it in. So, as you notice, these things kill vehicles. However, you have to go back and get more rockets. Missiles a lot. So you have to, you know, prioritize your targets. If you're like the weapon squad out of a platoon and you only get a few of these shots, you generally want to prioritize these for like your T-72s or your air threats if your air cover has fucked off the RTB or something. Because like I said, these will lock on to anything. Just the trade-off is you can't have that much ammo. Also, if you ever take HE out in the field with these, you're wrong. People will say you're right, but I'm telling you right now, because of the amount of space they take, unless you're bringing a vehicle full of these, you're wrong. Capiche? Cool. Now, we're going to move on to AA. Now, I used to have a module that had us shoot down a bunch of aircraft, but honestly, anyone can point at the sky and just pull the trigger. So, here's the deal. You have your Stinger, and you have your piece of shit. I call this the piece of shit because I, in an op, spent 27 Igla missiles trying to shoot down an A-10. 27. It was a long op. Your Stinger, I always like to think it's more effective, but honestly, it doesn't have that many better statistics. Basically, when you pull one of these out, hit your 3 key to take it out. You don't even have to hit T. If you're looking at the aircraft, it locks on for you. If for whatever reason it's not locking on or it's locking on to the wrong target, look at the right target and just hit the T key once every few seconds until you hear the whining of it locking on. And once it locks on, you'll get a dot in your little diamond white box, and then you can fire. However, there might be some instances where you don't want to fire. So, let me go over that. First and foremost, to hit a helicopter, actually, before I even get to that, when you fire this launcher, like the missile launchers we just went into, the missile does its best to predict, when you do a lock-on, where the vehicle's going to go. So if the vehicle cuts left or right and performs an evasive maneuver to evade the missile, it can have the missile go past, and the missile won't be effective because it'll lose lock and then just fly off in the distance and explode. However, on rare occasions, I've also seen an Igla loop literally back around and still hit its target. That's not how it works IRL, but in Arma, once in a blue moon it happens, so if you get lucky, good for you. But here's how you want to fire when you're firing against helicopters. Generally, you don't want to fire at a helicopter when it's coming up towards you, if it's like right above you, for example, because where's my rocket launcher pointing if I'm firing up directly at it? Or a missile launcher, whatever.
The ground.
Yep, I'm going to backblast myself and probably knock myself unconscious. Now, I'm also going to use this example. I've never had to use this example before, but after an op yesterday, I need to use this example. If I'm aiming like this, is this a good or bad idea?
It's a bad idea.
Why is it a bad idea, Argo?
There's a very big chance you hit the sign.
Yes, so when you fire an Igla or a Stinger, the rocket is actually going to take the first quarter of a second and drop before it gets the lock on. So if you are firing like this, I am going to guarantee you the missile is going to hit the fucking sign. I was in an op yesterday where a guy was on the side of the hill. We were on a mountain, and there was a 24 in front of him, hovering, trying to look for us. And he fired the launcher, and it went into the ground, basically into me, because I was in front of him trying to range for him, and it killed me. So don't fire this thing downhill, don't fire it in defilade if your target's like right in front of you, and don't fire it when there's a big object in front of you. Just because you're pointing it and going, oh, it's going to fly straight, it's not going to fly straight. It's going to go into the sign and then fly straight. But it's not going to fly straight because you just killed yourself. Capiche? Still salty about yesterday. Fuck. Anyway. So, you generally, unless the helicopter is way away from you and flying in, that's actually one of the best times to hit it because he'll have to evade left or right. So if you catch him in a gun run, I have a little highlight of me shooting an A-10 down that way. That's one of the best ways to do it. But otherwise, if the helicopter is flying perpendicular from you or away from you, those are generally the best times to hit it because it gives the missile the best time to correct itself to hit its target. Now, of course, if you're hitting against a pilot that is a player, it can be a bit tough because they'll probably perform an evasive maneuver, and you'll probably have to use 27 Igla rockets to shoot him. Now, when you're fighting against planes, the best times to hit it is when it's flying away from you or if it's lining up to do its gun run. Because, again, that gives the missile the least amount of correcting room so it can hopefully hit the target. I think it was Skelly's up, yeah. So you also notice that I have a Titan here. That's because in vanilla, you have an AA version, which is just the regular Titan MLRS, the AT version is called the Compact. But in modded, it works like a javelin, and you can, like I said, javelins can lock onto anything thermal, so they can shoot down aircraft. So, food for thought. Any questions on AA?
Negative.
All right. Cool. Guess we're done with AT. So, respawn. I'll see you in Grenadier. All right. Killen, glad you could join us for this one. So, we're going to go over Blue 4 and Op 4 systems. These are really the only two systems, but going on the table, I have your 203 and 320 systems, your MX system, which is a 3-shot. Basically, it gives you a red dot sight on the left, and you can reload it with 3 GLs. 3 GL meaning you get 3 shots per reload, and that works for HE and smokes and flares. So for HE, I generally use the first shot to range it because you only get a red dot sight to aim because it sucks. But then once you range it with the first shot, you can then use the other 2 shots to hopefully hit on target. And then you have your 6-shot, your M32, I think. We almost never use this one. However, starting this Tuesday and going forward for 6 weeks, I will have a class where you can actually use that launcher. So if you have a hard-on for that one, come Tuesdays in the morning, I'll have an op for you based on Ghost Recon. Anyway, let's talk about the 203 and the 320 system. So the 203 system is the older system, developed after NAM, and it's basically an underbarrel grenade launcher. So feel free to grab one, and if you hit F twice, you'll get into the grenade launcher sight. Now, what is the immediate problem you see when you use this grenade launcher sight?
At the front of the weapon.
What?
It's at the. You can't use optics.
Yes, you can't use optics. That's because rifle-based optics actually wasn't a thing until like the late 1990s, early 2000s. So, people back then had to use iron sights. You didn't have all your fancy SU-230 scopes and ACOGs for riflemen. So, they made the 320 system. Now, the 320 system's nice because it goes on the left side of your gun. They also made it a separate launcher that you can use as a secondary. It's on the table. And you can even range it to 100 meters more. So the 203 goes up to 250. The 320 goes up to 350. Pretty nifty, if you ask me. So I am now going to go over the various different types of ammos and even fire a shot off of each of them to display what each one does. So, also in this box, I'm going to exclude the M441HE grenade round because that's literally the same as the 40mm HE grenade round.
6.
So,
now.
taking my gun out.
Not long now, until I get that sweet Year 1 badge.
Give me 1 second to reload. Major Grimheart, thanks for the 11-month resub. I hope you keep enjoying everything, man. See you next month for that year lawn. Cheers, man. Alright, I'm going to range out all my shots to about 100 for demonstration purposes. So, this is your standard HE grenade. You fire it, it explodes. Kills people around it. Cool, right? That's literally all it does. Your HEDP grenade. Your high explosive dual purpose. Up until, I want to say 2 RHS updates ago, it was kind of just a weaker HE grenade with not much penetration value. Now, they've actually improved it. So this grenade can actually blow up and kill BTR-80s and lightly armored APCs. So, it's effective off of that. But if I fire it, it's hard to tell, but that explosion is actually smaller than an HE grenade explosion. So if you're using this against infantry, you generally want to carry HE or HEDP. HE for your infantry, HEDP for killing your light targets such as gun trucks, technicals, and BTR 70s and 80s. I'll be honest, a BTR 60, an HE grenade can probably blow that up, if not cause heavy damage. But otherwise, when you're fighting armored stuff, you want to do HEDP. Now you have your HET grenade. I mentioned this back when we were in the RPG section talking about the airburst round. That is because, like the airburst, you fire it, it hits the ground, and bounces up. It's like a bouncing Betty. But basically, by doing that, it increases the surface area of the explosion from a semisphere on the ground to a full sphere. And the shrapnel goes a longer distance, and it can hit more people. Now, let's go into the GL stun grenade. Now, this is an RHS stun grenade. As I teach in basic, you normally never, ever want to use RHS stun because, A, it does damage and actually kills on armored targets, so if you're using it to try to rescue HVIs or shit, you're going to kill them. And B, it ear rapes you pretty hard. We had an example of that yesterday. It wasn't pleasant, but really you just don't want to use these because it kills people, but sometimes you're still given it, but you fire it, and it makes an explosion. Now, there's no shrapnel in that explosion. It's literally just a proximity, so if you're within, like, 5 meters of that, you're gonna get ear raped. Your screen's gonna, like... How do I put it? Like, imagine a video with its bitrate at, like, 100. It's gonna, like, bitrate the heck out of your screen for a second. Play a really loud noise. Hopefully you'll have your earplugs in, because if you don't, you're actually gonna go deaf in real life. And, yeah, it's gonna hurt. Now, your buckshot round. It's literally a shotgun. Don't ever use it, because I have 30 shots with this gun. Why would I use a single reloadable buckshot round? It's stupid. Now, I have had an argument. What if you're clearing a fatal funnel, such as the barracks building, over to that direction, the one I'm pointing? But honestly, the buckshot doesn't really penetrate bodies. So if you have 3 guys, it's only going to hurt the first guy, maybe the second guy. So just use your bullets, because you get 30 of those. You only get 1 buckshot. We actually have master keys now, which I don't go over in Grenadier training because, you know, it's like firing a shotgun. But, you know, just use that. If you really want a shotgun, we have ops where you actually take out shotguns. Or you can get a master key gun. We have had an op once in a Blue Moon where we're using the new Promet 6.5s that have that. So, you know, you can just use it. Don't use buckshot. Buckshot bad. Alright, reloading here. You have your flare round. Flare, really simple. You fire it, it makes a bright light. Useful at night. Now, the only time you want to fire it up in the air, I would say, is in your Unsun Vietnam ops. That's because your flare rounds in those ops are literally like mini suns. They will light up like a full 500-meter area. But otherwise, the flare is usually not that bright. In fact, it only illuminates, I want to say, up to 5 meters in a diameter. Not a radius, a diameter. It's pretty pathetic. But if you're at night and you see the glint of someone's night vision, and you're not using night vision, but you're fighting dudes that have it, you can load one of these and fire it right on their position. Now, that little bright light, again, hard to see because it's day, also because I'm using an IR flare, and they generate a smaller light source unless you're using night vision. But that will illuminate their position, and you can get... English. And then you can say, guys, at the flare, enemy forces, or they'll just see the enemy force there and start lighting them up. This is how you can basically show your friends and your squad, hey, there's bad guys over there, and then illuminate that area for them to shoot. Or, if you're the JTAC and you're given a 203 or 320 system, you can then radio in and say, hey, air, at the red flare, enemies, gun run, whatever you need to do as JTAC to tell air to kill the infantry over there. Because you're a JTAC and you want to dick on everything you see with your shiny air asset, right? So, that's the use of flares. It's basically to help guide in or walk in targets, as well as illumination, but that's really only for NOM when the flares work like mini suns. Now, let's go over smoke rounds. Smoke is your opposite of a flare. It's used during the day, and it's used for target acquisition. So, you fire it. Notice how much that bounced. It literally bounced on the other side of the runway, even though I fired it towards the middle, if not closer. These rounds do bounce around, so for infantry target acquisition, it's not that effective. But for air asset target acquisition, it's pretty effective because that red smoke is definitely going to get an asset's attention compared to, you know, not firing it and just having a flat thing. You know, saying the runway, where on the runway, saying red smoke on the runway. Now your air asset knows where to shoot. Now, this type of smoke isn't the most effective for concealment because if you hit Shift K, obviously, with that in mind, you line up a smoke grenade with the wind. But with that bounce, it's hard to predict where the smoke grenade's going to go. So if you need to fire it somewhere really specific to line up where the wind's blowing to actually conceal you, it might bounce off target and be useless. So generally, we only use smoke grenades for target acquisition, but there are some emergencies. And there's also one exception when we talk about the GP25 system called Fast Smoke, which I'll talk about. But for now, I would just say use the smoke grenades for target acquisition. Any questions on that?
Let's give him a warm welcome, shall we?
All right, cool. And then your Hunt IR round. Now, I forgot to tell you guys, so everyone go back in the arsenal, go to your backpack, hit the plus key, and grab a Hunt IR monitor. And then once you've done that, back away.
Where am I going?
Go into the arsenal, go to your backpack. On the right side, you'll see there's 2 magazines, a grenade, an explosion, a plus item. Hit the plus icon, and on Hunt IR monitor, hit the plus next to it to give yourself one. Hunt IR is, in my opinion, the coolest round you'll ever use in a grenade launcher. That's because you fire this puppy right up in the air. Now, if you look in the air, you'll see a little explosion, like a little puff of smoke, there it is, and then a little parachute with something on it will appear. That's because if you hold Control Windows, go to your equipment, you can activate your Hunt IR monitor. Now, this round is called a Hunt IR round. I wonder what that means. You'll see searching, and then connecting, and then you get a camera. Now, to move this camera around, use the arrow keys. It changes angles at about a 15-degree radius. If you hit the D key, you'll notice that the zoom will change, going from 0 times zoom up to 8 times zoom. And if you have multiple Hunt IR cameras up, you can switch between them using W and S. Now, it'll tell you what camera you're on and the zoom it is on the top right of your little screen, as well as on the top left. It'll tell you your current altitude and your grid ref, at least of the camera. And this also goes with wind, so if you want to blow in a certain direction, you use Shift K, or you pop a smoke grenade to tell. It's entirely up to you. Also, it tells you how long it's been up there on the bottom left of your screen, and it floats through the sky. Now, other things to note, let's see if my accuracy isn't dog shit today. If you fire at the parachute, it falls faster. There she go. Now, other thing to note, like the Raven little drone from Ace, those actually won't aggro AI. However, you can guarantee on your bottom dollar that the Zeus will have the AI aggro if that thing falls in their sight range. Because it's not every day when you're in Durkistan when a little parachute flies by with a round. But once that thing lands, it despawns from play, but it's given to Grenadiers, and the Hunt IR is given to the Grenadier as well as the squad leader usually, and that lets them, when they're in a town or a large AO, see, okay, here's our position, here's where enemies are mobilizing, and then they can, you know, make their orders based off of that information. Furthermore, I forgot to mention on that Hunt IR monitor, it does have a night vision optic. However, it does not have thermals, so you are restricted to regular lighting and NVGs on that puppy. Any questions on anything regarding the 203 or 320 system?
Negative.
Cool.
Arming distance on rounds.
Okay. This always changes. It used to be that the 203 and 320 system had a minimal arming range of about, I want to say, 5 meters. So if I were to fire this point blank, it won't blow me up. That's still the same going forward. It used to be that the GP25 system didn't have a minimal det range. However, I think after 2 updates or 1 update ago, it now does have a minimal det range. So if you're firing a stun round point blank, it probably won't go off. But feel free to test it. So I want to say, at this distance to the Heskos, that is your minimal arming distance. More or less. So don't fire these point blank to kill yourself. That would be bad. And it wouldn't work. Any other questions? Cool. Let's move on to the GP25. Now, the GP25 system is interesting because you can range this bad boy up to 400 meters, but you don't get those nice little sight lines. You literally get a little tick on a scope. So you just line it up with the solid line that it creates. So good luck with that, you know, actually aiming at 400 meters. You generally need someone to laser range for you at that point, but yeah, it can go up to 400. You just, being accurate with it is something different entirely. So, now, going over the various different types of rounds. These are all labeled differently, but I will compare them to everything we just fired on the other system. So, going to my GP, we're going to go, I think, let's see, it should have a VG loaded in it by proxy. Okay. So, your VOG-25 is your standard HE round. Let me range this down to 100. You fire it, it explodes. Just like your HE. Now, your VOG-25P. We'll fire this out. Ooh, that one had a bounce. That one's still bouncing. That one didn't even detonate. Okay, RHS updates. I love it. So that one, it's supposed to bounce and explode, but that one just decided to bounce and be a fucking dud. So I guess we shouldn't use those for a while until they fix it. Let me fire one more. It's
Does it have like an inertial fuse?
It looked like it exploded
test that
now.
theory. Did it
Yeah,
just
it looks like
explode?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so looks like they added a lawn fuse time for the VOG 25P. Lovely. But even if you load it, it literally tells you it's an HET grenade, so fun shit. Let's try one more. Awesome. Okay, so just don't use that one because it looks like the fuse is a little busted. Thanks, RHS. Anyway, your VG40TB. This is one of my favorites. This is your big suck round. And it makes a really cool box-shaped explosion. But like I said, sucks out all the oxygen, kills infantry next to it, and it, yeah, kills people in buildings. Your VG40SZ is your stun round. Like I said, it's an RHS stun, so it'll ignore armor and it'll do significant damage to people. And unarmored targets. But if you have this weapon, you're generally Russian and you don't care about hostages. It's a joke I make. It's a joke. Don't freak out. It's a joke. I had an actual Russian get annoyed with me because of that joke, but regardless. Let's see. This is your VG40OP. It's your flare round. So you fire this, and it makes a flare. Also, it bounces a little bit if it hits the ground. But again, target acquisition for your air assets. And then you have your GRD40 Red. This is your smoke round. Now, up until 2 RHS updates ago, these things would bounce like crazy. And in my opinion, they still kind of bounce like crazy. It took out a fence.
It's
Must
one
be
hell
hella
of a
thick.
bounce.
Hell of a smoke around there, Liru.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, smokes are generally for target acquisition, not really concealment because they go everywhere. Now, the only exception to this rule is my second favorite grenade in the game, which we rarely use, the GMD40, also known as your fast smoke. So, picture this. Your squad leader's an idiot and decided to march you guys over an open field, even though you can see the machine guns on the other side of said open field. Then, oh no, the machine guns open fire because you're in an open field. You throw smoke grenades. However, you're dead because the smoke grenades still take 3 to 5 seconds to billow out. But if you're a Grenadier and you have fast smoke, and you hit Shift K to account for wind, you fire this in between you and the machine guns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So about right now, the smoke billows out and the machine guns can fire at me. But while I fire that, everyone else in my squad who has a brain is popping smoke grenades. Like I just said, it takes 3 to 5 seconds for that smoke to start billowing out. And then by 10 seconds, you're good for concealment, where you will then prone, cuss out your squad leader for being an idiot, take control of the squad, and order them to go get in that warehouse over there, like a bunch of intelligent people. And then JTAC will tell Air to fuck up that other side of the ridge or open field, and yeah, you'll be safe. But fast smoke, it is rare to see it in action, but I did it in the previous Russian potluck. It does buy you those extra seconds to survive. Like I said, it's niche, but when you get it, and when you need it, it's there for you, and it can save your entire squad. Cool, eh? If you notice, both of these Grenadier systems, they have, like, you know, same standard grenades, but then they have a few unique things to each model, which I just find fascinating. Any questions on Grenadier shit? Cool. Let me get into Zeus real quick. Ow. Alright, so I'm going to spawn a few clusters of Chad and some BTR 60s and 70s for you to practice shit on. Otherwise, give me just a second here.
Standing by. Ready. Waiting. Ready for orders. Get off.
And I'll throw in some 80s to vary things out. But for PID's sake, guys, that is an 80. The one on the left here is an 80. The one with the less fancy gun on the top is a 60. So, you know, for your PID purposes, there you go. I will also tell all the Chads to be idiots so they won't start running away after you fire your rounds. But otherwise, yeah, if you want to test those weapon systems, feel free. I'm going to start tagging people in the Thingamajig. So, yeah, have fun.
Ready for orders. Ready. Waiting orders. Waiting.
Oh, the Chads are aggroed. Alright, so I gotta tab out, open up spreadsheet, and start tagging them, so apologies for this, but let's see. Kilngau already had Grenadier. He was trying to come to AT, but he was late for that, so oof to that. Argo is not on my spreadsheet. That's weird. Okay, he probably got deleted, but he still has his tier 1, so okay. What do I do here? LMNOP QRS. So he gets both FA 76. AT and Grenadier. Harrier. It's both of those. Awesome. and Warlock. Cool. All right. Easy class. So that's all saved. And let's see how many things they've blown up. Ah, the TV explosion. God, I love that one. Alright, let's bring it in real quick, just so I can say something. I've gotten you all tagged. Killing, you already had your Grenadier, so, cack. But, yeah, all of you have been tagged on spreadsheet. Ops, there's going to be 3 today, 2, 4, and 6:30 respectively. So, actually, it might be 1:30. Check the schedule. I might be wrong, because I'm an idiot. Otherwise, I'll keep my server up, at least till about, like, for the next hour or so if you want to just kill everything on the range if you're bored. Otherwise, yeah, you can always go to the virtual arsenal and practice any of the weapons that you have loaded in your mods or vanilla weapons, however you want to do it. And if you want to practice yourself. But in my opinion, best way to practice is just playing up with that role and getting experience for it in the field, because there's only so much you can do with training, right? Or am I right? Anyway, that is it for me. I'm going to disconnect. So, yeah, good job, guys. Thank you for training. And Tier 2 is, one last thing, sorry. Tier 2, it's now, I think, 3 weapon trainings, and you have to be here for 3 weeks. I don't know why they're trying to make it harder, but, you know, they just want people to be dedicated. So, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to start letting Tier 1s in my Tier 2 ops anyway, so, fuck it. Any questions?
Nope.
No.
Alright. Have fun.
Thank you.
Doop-a-doop, boop-a-snoop. Alright, let me check the internet. If I were to go into my Discord. Go to weekly op schedule. Billman does have his op. It's at 1. And he is back, so I need to take out currently open next to it because he is back. He had a deployment for a bit, but he is back now to do his stuff. So we'll be back in about 2 hours for his operation. We'll be doing that at 1 o'clock. I then have a Zeus op, TFA Phase 10, which will be at 4 p.m. EST, though that is an open to the public op, so if you guys want to jump in on that, I have a video talking about how you can do it, or you can just jump in the TeamSpeak
Let's give him a warm welcome,
and do
shall
that.
we?
You can either get the IP through Discord or, again, the video I made. And then I will be Zeusing an op at 7 for, like, the second to last community I owe an op to. And I got to contact the last community and say, hey, I can do something for you, and then we can get through with that. But that is it. At least for the next 2 hours. So we got, 3 more streams today, 3 more ops. It's going to be great. But anyway, thank you so much for your time on Friday. Go operate operationally. Enjoy the rest of your day or night wherever you are. Otherwise, cheers. Have a good one. Oh, and we're starting Ghost Recon ops on Tuesday. It's going to be great. Ghost Recon 2 Advanced Warfighter was
Let's give him a
great.
warm welcome, shall
Or
we?
no, it's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter 2. Ah! Cheers.